Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at Vetroo's V5 cooler. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so today we'll be taking a look at Vetroo's V5 cooler. Now, for those of you that don't know, Vetroo are a relative newcomer to the market and started noticing them on Amazon, places like that. I was really intrigued. It doesn't appear to be a well-known brand, and quite often you see these coolers pop up every now and then at reasonable prices, and we're always a little bit hesitant. So I really wanted to try this one out to see what it's like. Now, it does tick for me an awful lot of boxes. So it fits pretty much most Intel and AMD sockets, right the way up to the latest and greatest AM4 and LGA 1200. It also combines a 120mm tower cooler with 5 heat pipes, which is awesome. Also has a nice polished, smooth cold plate, and also, best of all, it has a little touch of addressable RGB, which is always great. Well, for me it is anyway. So on the video today, we're going to go through, do a product tour, do an unboxing, then I'm going to test it on my system. So it is actually going in my own system. This is with the Ryzen 9 3900, and we'll see how well it does in there. Now obviously, this probably isn't the best choice for that particular processor, but it certainly should handle it. They do say it will take CPUs up to around about 150 watts, so we're kind of getting there with a little bit of overclocking, but certainly it should be a rather good test for it. So we should start off with the price on this one. Now the prices do fluctuate on this a lot. Now even just between the kind of the week or so that I've actually owned this and the price now, that has changed already. So generally the kind of recommended retail price for this one on Amazon.co.uk is in and around the £31 to £32 mark. But very often there are voucher codes and discount codes available, which will bring it down to closer to around about £25, £26. So as far as I'm concerned, with a 120mm tower cooler, 5 heat pipes and addressable RGB, for around about the £26 mark, I think is phenomenal value for money. That is if it works well. The other alternatives on the market with a kind of similar spec, you'll be looking at things like the Cooler Master, the 212 Evo, the RGB version of that kind of thing, which is essentially almost double the price when this is on offer. So yeah, even if this isn't as good as the 212 and other similar coolers, for half the price, it should be competitive. Anyway, that's enough blithering. Let's take a look at the packaging and get on with this. So as you can see from the front of the box, so we've got the Vetroo logo, V5 CPU cooler in black. Now actually it does come in two options. There is a black and also a white version. So if you're going for one of those kind of snowy builds, then there is a white version also, which also comes with an addressable RGB fan, so that's all good. You've got a 5V 3-pin addressable RGB header, actually for the fan itself, and it's actually a pass-through as well, so you don't have to worry about it taking up your last remaining connector. You can still pass through the signal to other devices, which is great. 5 heat pipes, there's 5 on there, 6mm heat pipes, and so that should provide a pretty decent amount of cooling. And also we've got a PWM controlled smart fan, so it pretty much ticks most of the boxes. Moving on to the back of the box goes into some of the specifications, which we'll quickly drill down through. So overall dimensions, 128 by 75 by 148. Now this actually has a quite small footprint as far as things go for 120mm tower coolers. Being 148mm high actually means it will fit in the majority of cases, so that is a really good start. The fan dimension, 120mm as we said before, and the fan speed has got an operational RPM of somewhere between 800 and also 1700 RPM, plus or minus 10%. I would have personally liked to have seen it go down a little bit lower than that. It'd be interesting to see in our testing a little bit later on to see what the actual lowest RPM we can get before the fan actually stops. So yeah, that would be interesting to see. It's got a rated noise level of 30.8 dBA, which yeah, I very much doubt it. It's about 32 dBA in this room as we speak, just ambient noises, that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty much confident that this is going to be louder than almost anything in the room when it's at full blast, but certainly we'll be seeing that later. Static pressure, we've got 3.61mm H2O, which actually seems relatively high. Actually it does seem very, very high. I'm not too sure why that is, but certainly it does appear to be a static optimized fan. The bearing is a hydraulic bearing in there, and the weight of it is only 761 grams, which is actually pretty lightweight considering it is a 120mm tower cooler with those 5 heat pipes. Recommended TDP is 150 watts, so kind of realistically, pretty much anything will be fine with it. There's not really a great deal which will go over and above the limits. If you're getting a CPU which is giving out more than 150 watts, then really you probably look best off looking at water cooling anyway, but certainly that is their kind of guesstimate average, so we'll certainly see how well it does against the Ryzen 9 3900X. Compatibility wise, as we touched on a little bit earlier, so it's compatible with Intel socket LGA 1366, 1156, 1155, 1151, 1150, and of course the old 775. When we go over to the AMD side of things, we've got support for AMD socket AM4, AM3+, AM3, AM2+, AM2, FM2, and FM2+. There will be a couple of other ones in there as well, which use the similar sort of mounting mechanism where it screws down in, but yeah, it should be fine for quite a lot of sockets. Also on the bottom there is showing you some of the connections, so it's got the 4-pin PWM style connector and also that 5-volt addressable RGB connector with that also important pass-through for you RGB lovers out there. Also there is the model number there, so this is the VT CPU V5 Black or BK. If you want the white version, obviously make sure you type in the right number when you go into Amazon. So let's go through the unboxing process. First of all, it's actually packaged pretty well. There's a little bit of styrofoam in there to keep things nice and steady. So we'll take out this side first of all. So this is our accessories pack. We've got the addressable RGB fan. And last of all, we've got the actual tower itself. Now, the tower itself is finished in this quite nice sort of satin matte black finish. And there is a very discreet V logo in the top there. And there is, from what I believe, 48 fins on here, all made of pure aluminium. So that should be pretty good for cooling purposes. Also, as you can see, there are the 5 heat pipes which terminate each side, so you've got 10 spots on the end there. Yeah, it's actually pretty decent. Not overly heavy, but certainly not a lightweight cooler. And actually looks pretty good. Quite nice for some of these more stealthy builds. Obviously, the RGB will put rest to that, but certainly if you wanted to, you could always change the fan out for something else, like a notch or something. The bottom part of it, you've got some nice finned parts of the actual cold plate there, so that will help with some heat dissipation. And some of you may have noticed already the actual shape of this thing. So we've got cutouts here and here. Now there is actually a very, very good reason why they actually do that. A lot of people have said, oh, why would they do that? It just takes away some of the cooling performance. In actual fact, it doesn't. The way that these coolers actually work is essentially these heat pipes wick heat from the cold plate at the bottom up to the top. And as it gets away, it radiates through the fins. So if you think about it, when a fan is actually on this unit, these bits here actually don't get any airflow whatsoever. So essentially what it's doing is, rather than allowing heat to build up in these areas where it's actually going to get hotter at the bottom, because there's nothing there to actually wick to, it just means the heat is actually going to go higher up through the heat pipes. Now when it does that, obviously, these heat pipes here have got a larger surface area at the top, and also they're in direct line of sight of the actual fan blades themselves. So if you look at it that way round, I'll probably get some B-roll of this so you can see it a little bit clearer. But essentially, in this position, that cutout is probably the best possible way you could do it, because you've literally got the fan blowing as much air as possible actually onto the heat pipes themselves and the fins that those are attached to around that sort of middle section, rather than wasting any kind of heat escape on the side. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense to some of you. But yeah, there is method in their madness. So on the bottom, we've got a little sticker here to protect the cold plate. Taking that off is going to reveal actually what appears to be a pretty decent finish on there. Looks pretty flat, and give it the nail test, and there is a little bit where my nail is getting stuck on this end one, but certainly overall it does feel very flat in this central section. Just on that end it's a little bit raised. So yeah, not entirely perfect, but certainly a lot better than some of the coolers we've seen. Also on the bottom we can actually see some of the mounting areas for the various accessories which attach on. So we've got 4 screw holes there. So yeah, that's going to be nice and easy to attach things to. So let's take a look at some of the other accessories we get and take a look at the fan itself. So the fan itself, as you can see, it doesn't have any obvious markings on it. On the back it just says Vetroo, so nothing particular there. Nice opaque blade, so that's going to let the RGB bleed through quite nicely. You can actually see the motor in the middle quite visibly. Would have been nice possibly to have something over the top of that to maybe blank out, but certainly isn't the end of the world, and when it's spinning fast you're probably not going to notice it. There is actually rubber pads on all 4 sides, or corners rather, on both sides, so that's going to help absorb some of the vibrations from it. It is a voltage rated up to 12 volts, and the rated current is 0.35 amps for those of you that are interested. The cables themselves are all blacked out right to the end, and there's a 4-pin PWM style connector And also we've got our addressable RGB connector, and that actually has got the 3-pin 5-volt, as we said, and also a pass-through, which has got a really nice cap on it. So if you're not planning to use the pass-through, you can just leave that in your system and it isn't going to cause any damage. So yeah, really like that. Nice little touches all around the fan. So you've got some like slotted areas around the sides there, and you've also got the V logo on there for Vetroo. So yeah, actually looks pretty decent. I'm quite impressed so far. And next up is going to be our accessories bag. So let's see how easy or how difficult this is going to be to install. So first of all, we've got a small thing of Vetroo cooling thermal paste. Be interesting to see what that is actually like. We'll probably end up using MX4 or something in this particular setup, but it's nice that they actually include it. Next up, there's a set of 4 screws. Now these are for attaching the actual CPU mounting bars to the heatsink itself. Mounting bracket wise, we've got 2 Intel ones with spring connections on there, as you'd expect to see. And you've got the same deal for the AMD ones as well. So you've got the AMD logo on there. Those are just straighter. You can always tell the Intel ones, they've got kind of like a dog leg to them. I'll try and get you some B-roll of that so you can see what they look like. If you are using with the Intel setup, then they do provide a Intel backplate, which is actually plastic rather than being metal. There is also like a self-adhesive ring around the outside there, so you can stick it to the back of your board. And you've also got these adjusters, so depending on which type of socket you're using, whether you're using 775, 1366, or the 1200s, that kind of stuff, then you just adjust those to whichever size it needs to be. So yeah, that's pretty decent. Nice to see that included. Sadly, we've got spring clips for attaching the fan to the actual cooler itself, but these actually don't look too bad at all. They look pretty decent, so yeah, hopefully it should be pretty straightforward. And talking of pretty straightforward, we do get an installation guide, which is always nice to see. And we've got the parts list on one side with Intel, and on the other side you've got your AMD setup. So yeah, that's all pretty good, looks pretty straightforward. Usual kind of deal. This uses the standard AM4 backplate, or if you're using for AM3, then it will use a standard backplate on that as well also. So yeah, looks pretty good overall. So that is pretty much it for the parts and the packaging. We've had a quick drill through that. So the best thing to do now is actually install it on my system and do some testing, and we'll be back straight after. Okay, so that's the installation done, and as you can possibly see from some of the montage I've possibly put together, actually not too bad at all. As per usual, the spring clips did catch me out a little bit. If you do remove the graphics card, it's going to make life a lot easier for you, to be completely honest. I was being lazy and thought I'd just try and do it without it. Clearly, it's not going to be as easy to install as certain water coolers because of the access areas, but overall, actually not a bad experience. Using the standard backplate, as we said previously, just line it up. You do need to have something beneath or actually holding the back plate in place in order to get the pressure down on the screws, but yeah, that is pretty much the same for most setups these days. Overall though, very pleased with it, and actually temperatures, fantastically good. Lowest temperatures recorded around about 32 degrees, which was monitored on the system using both Ryzen Master and hardware monitor. So yeah, very pleased with that. Maximum temperatures in and around 72, 73 degrees, sometimes getting up as high as 75 degrees. So it does a pretty decent job. Considering it is a single fan 120mm cooler, there isn't a great deal out there which comes close to it in terms of price. Now you could go with something else a little bit more bland, such as the Snowman cooler, which we reviewed, which you can check out up here, which actually performs very, very similarly. This does have a slight edge on it, and actually going back to the fan RPMs, which we mentioned earlier on in the review, this does actually register down to around about 550 RPMs at its lowest point, which is approximately 30%. So yeah, those of you that are concerned that maybe 800 RPM is a little bit on the high side for its lowest RPM status, it will go down to around about 550, and underneath that it just basically stops. So very, very quiet. And actually it was the quietest thing in the system. The fans in my Fantex P400A, the fans in front were actually noisier than the fans on this, although they did look very similar, as you've probably seen from some of the B-roll. It does match in with the system very, very nicely, and does give that extra bit of RGB bling in the middle of the PC. So overall, recommendations, yep, definitely gets a thumbs up from me. At its voucher code price of around about sort of £25, £26, yeah, it's an absolute no-brainer. It saves you waiting for weeks for something to come from AliExpress from China, such as the Snowman coolers, and I would say it actually looks considerably better. The matte black finish is really nice, although it does tend to be a little bit of a fingerprint magnet. If you've got slightly greasy fingers, it does mark on there quite easily, so do bear that in mind for installation. You maybe want to put on a pair of gloves or something, and then you maybe, and possibly when you're cleaning, maybe yeah, be a little bit careful with what you use to actually clean it, otherwise it may mark or stain. So there is that to it. But otherwise, this is a fantastic package, and if this is anything like the rest of the products from Vetroo, then I'm actually really looking forward to finding out more. So we've mentioned the positives, let's take a look at some of the negatives. So the negative is the mounting system. The mounting system on AM4 could be improved. Not inherently a problem with the cooler itself, more of a problem of just the way things are. I would have personally liked to have seen something which screws into the back plate to hold it in place, then allowing you to put a little bit more pressure onto the cooler to mount it, but yeah, that is being excessively picky. The other thing I would possibly say is the mounting system for the fans. Those aren't the simplest. Again, I am being picky. I could have easily moved the graphics card. That would have made life a lot simpler. The overall finish, again, the matte black thing, leaving fingerprints, yeah, excessively nitpicky, but certainly is something which would be classed as a negative in my opinion. Having said that, I think those are really the main negatives, and the positives certainly outweigh it. So you've got fantastic performance, fantastic looking, fantastic price. Yeah, I think those trump the other three pretty easily. But anyway, you let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. In the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.